So for my research project, I learned about the economy of Venezuela. Despite having such a rich oil industry, Venezuela has suffered from political and economic instability, partly due to the mismanagement that the Venezuelan government has done with the vast oil reserves in the country and the wealth that they've accumulated from it. So Venezuela's economy is heavily reliant on oil exports. Today, Venezuela is the world's fifth largest oil exporting country and has the world's largest proven oil reserves at nearly 300 billion barrels as of 2012. Venezuela is also a founding member of OPEC. So going back into history around 1500, the country was colonized by Spanish settlers who initially found economic success in the raising of livestock, and then later grew into an agricultural-based economy fueled by cocoa plantations that were manned by large importations of African slaves. So in 1922, a blowout occurred at an oil well in the Venezuelan city Cabimas. This marked the beginning of Venezuela's modern history as a major oil producer and an important factor in world policymaking. Many foreign companies began to acquire territory in Venezuela in hopes of striking it rich, so that between 1920 and 1935, oil exports in Venezuela boomed from 1.9% to 91.2%. So that resulted in a Dutch disease in Venezuela, as the Venezuelan oil industry began to dominate all other economic sectors of the country, restricting Venezuela's overall ability to create and maintain other industries, in particular the agriculture sector. So the government ignored serious social problems, causing Venezuela to fall well behind other industrialized countries. So before World War II, Venezuela's natural resources were being exploited by foreign oil companies, which convinced the government it needed to gain more control over its oil industry. So then the Hydrocarbons Law of 1943 was passed, which was the first major political step taken towards gaining more government control over its oil industry. So at the beginning of World War II, Venezuela was the world's leading oil exporter and became a supplier of oil to the Allies. Venezuela saw a large increase in oil production both during and after the war, which allowed Venezuela to become one of the few Latin American countries that was able to finance its own modernization in the post-war era. So in the 1960s, oil prices plummeted due to Middle Eastern countries making significant contributions to the international petroleum market. So that caused Venezuela to join four Middle Eastern oil-producing countries to form OPEC, which was an international organization aimed to secure and stabilize international oil prices. OPEC has grown to 12 members and today remains a strong factor in world policymaking. So then oil prices rose in 1973 due to the oil embargo, which was imposed by the Middle Eastern countries against the United States. This allowed Venezuela to enjoy a significant increase in oil production prices. However, the brief period of economic prosperity was short-lived for Venezuela due to the oil glut of 1980s caused by all the OPEC members not adhering to their assigned quotas. So in 1976, Venezuela nationalized its oil industry. They replaced all foreign oil companies in Venezuela with national ones, including Petroleos de Venezuela South America, shortened to PDVSA. In 1980, PDVSA bought refineries in USA and Europe that made it the third largest oil company in the world. So then in 1999, Hugo Chavez was elected president of Venezuela. He enacted many policy changes in hopes of nationalizing further the oil industry. Critics accused Chavez of politicizing the oil sector and engaging in government corruption, and production saw an overall decline during his time in office, so now Venezuela's economy is even more dependent on oil. So the current president of Venezuela is Nicolas Maduro. He succeeded Hugo Chavez following his death in 2013. Maduro continued the majority of existing economic policies of Chavez, but he now faces a high inflation rate and a large shortage of goods. Maduro has been criticized for only concentrating on public opinion instead of tending to the practical issues economists have warned the Venezuelan government about. So economically, the Dutch disease continues to plague the Venezuelan economy. This poses a risk to the country, making it entirely tied to the fluctuating oil prices, and the boom and bust nature of the international oil market makes such a heavy reliance very risky for Venezuela. The country may enjoy economic prosperity for a period of time just to watch the prices plummet again later. So Venezuela's oil supplies have become politicized and mismanaged. The oil boom of the past decade has garnered money that went straight into Chavez and Maduro's pockets. And that money fueled government corruption and worsened the political problems Venezuela has tried to escape from for decades. So, in conclusion, the past 100 years that Venezuela has enjoyed a rich oil supply, the vast wealth has often been mismanaged and seemingly resulted in political instability and an economy suffering from the Dutch disease. Throughout history, Venezuela has been at the mercy of fluctuating oil prices and suffered from boom and bust cycles. And the oil income has both completely taken over the Venezuelan economy and exacerbated political and social tensions in the country.